understand who you are, stay true to that, and stay true to your community. The rest will take care of itself. GLP-1s might come along. There might be a new thing tomorrow. As long as people know who you are and what you're about, you will be ready for all of those.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Vanguard podcast. I'm Jenny Rooney here at Adweek, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Paulie Dery. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of AG1, formerly Athletic Greens. Paulie, welcome.
Thanks, Jenny. Great to be here with on the Vanguard. Loving it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I feel like we're overdue. I feel like I've known of you, about you, I've followed your story for years. And it's exciting because when I look at your resume, and I know folks would see this too, obviously you strike me as somebody who's gone for the, what's the best word? The edgy brands. And I mean that in the best possible way. Uber, YETI, now AG1, you came up through the agency world. And I just feel like you've got an interesting and unique story in our industry. And again, I'm not placing value judgment on one or the other, but there's a lot of marketers who elevate to the CMO role who came up through maybe more traditional paths or have spent time at more traditional brands. And I don't know. I find that you seem to be perhaps maybe it's an excitement-seeking aspect of you.
Maybe. I think there's lots of happening there. Let me start with, first of all, every career decision I made, everyone said, that's dumb. That's a dumb thing to do. And I I just think I wait to hear that. So it validates that it's a good idea. When I was a kid, I was at an ad agency in Australia, and it was a lot of fun. And I thought, wow, I'd love to go try this crazy little agency in Hell's Kitchen, New York, called RGA, and no one had heard of them. And everyone was like, that's dumb. And that it turned out to be a tremendous, almost decade at RGA as agency of the decade, and so much fabulous work. And what a great, a lot of my best friends are still there. And then when I made the move to brand side with Uber, everyone was like, that's dumb. You've got your best job, your ECD of RGA. It's incredible. There's this startup called Uber. It seems sketchy. What is this? Made the move. And then, eventually it was with Uber, and we took it to IPO. We went through all this craziness at Uber. We finally got it really settled. It's a fantastic company today. And I think that's because a lot of the work we did. And I went to a cooler and cup company in Texas called YETI. And at the time, people said, that's dumb. Why are you doing that? Seems stupid. And, 5-6 years later, I think YETI again is one of the great American brands. And now I'm at AG1, and it's the same deal. We're on the track to make this again one of the great brands in the country. So long story short, I think what interests me about moves are how do I have impact on a business? I think when you're in the agency, it's the hardest thing, right? Yeah, and you sit there and you're like, boy, it'd be a lot easier if I was the person at the other end of the table making this decision, because this is really hard, and they're not great listeners. And do they really understand great creative? Because they don't seem super creative people. And so that was my kind of move to brand was, well, what if I could make those decisions and have a great impact on the business? I was very lucky that Uber picked up on that early and really let me in at the table, and let me tell those stories and have great impact. So for me, every move's been about impact. Where can I have great impact? And what are the companies or CEOs that really value creativity as a big part of their business? YETI's, have always had a great brand, great storytelling. So they embrace it. AG1 knew what they were getting when they hired me, was very open about what type of marketer I was, and it was exactly what they wanted. So that's kind of how I fell into each role. But it was always, where could I have impact, and where could creativity really lead the path forward?
Well, I think that's the important nuance, right? Listen, you're creative director. You're a group executive creative director, RGA. And I have to ask, were you there during the Nike FuelBand?
Of Of course, of course. We did some phenomenal Nike work. N- Under the great Wizard of Oz, Nick Law and Bob Greenberg, we did incredible work. But what I loved about that work was, yes, there was amazing Nike work, but there was like amazing Verizon work, amazing Mastercard work. It was so interesting that these somewhat traditionally big, heavy brands, because the digital revolution was occurring, you could really do interesting things. So I think that's kind of stayed with me. When it was with Uber, it became a very big org, right? And to be able to maneuver that org and do great things in that org, I think was partly because of RGA and what we learned there.
I'm sitting here a little bit wistful in hearing you talk about that era because that was a pretty heady era where there was so much. And to me, this takes me back to, well, frankly, in the late 90s, the rise of the interactive agencies and all the digital work. I mean, truly, like the internet was suddenly a thing where you could actually advertise and build brands and everything else. And then obviously into the 2000s, there was just sort of that excitement, right, around the unlock that web technology and technology in general was going to afford brands. Um,
Yeah, but it was magic.
it was
Yeah,
magic.
yeah, and I think because I think advertising always, when it's at its best, is when there is an element of perceived magic, right? I think, like in the 80s, 90s, TV was magic because they didn't understand, it wasn't a commodity, right? It took time, it took money, it took talent, and then all of a sudden it got very sped up, right? And the magic kind of went away. I could shoot a TV ad very quickly and the magic went away. Digital came along and the magic was back. I don't know how to build those apps. I don't know how to do that. So the clients were handing over and getting what they perceived as magic in return. We're there again with AI. Look, we're always in the magic phase. You just have to find it.
And RGA was a unique environment back then. It's changed dramatically since then. Any any thoughts or
Yeah, I mean, look again. I think, and this is maybe a leadership topic for me. What the magic of RGA? Look, I came to RGA as an advertising punk, right? Baseball cap wearing. My idea is the best. Stay out of my way. Where's craft service? And RGA absolutely smacked that out of you so fast, because what was fascinating about it, and really this was Nick and Bob's gift, was you're going to sit next to someone called a technologist or a UX person, right? Or an engineer and, to be honest, pretty socially awkward people, would talk into their shoes. And to have to work with those people was a real challenge. But what I really picked up on quick was, these guys make your ideas so much better. Like I could never turn this idea into an app or turn it into a tool the way they do. And so really the magic, of Nick was, hey, why don't you just go talk to this person? And he knew that it would get you to something really interesting. And the RGA's magic was, how do I throw enough bizarre people together to make something wonderful? And so I really, that was the secret juice. I think there today, look, agencies are going through it. I'm not here to pile on agencies, but something's up, right? It was a big reason I've taken everything I've gone in-house. Um, well, and it's, people say, why in-house, right? Is it cheaper? Is it faster? I think they're byproducts, but the truth is, the answer is something's just not clicking on the agency side. I think they'll get there. They'll work it out. There's a lot of smart people there. And when they work it out, there'll be more of a balance in the industry. But something's broken, whether it's, I don't know, holding companies, fee structures, how they value time. But something isn't working on the agency side. And I think that's what RGA in the old days really uncovered was, you got to let these crazy people just be sometimes. And that's the focus.
well, and I spent that much time talking about that because I do think it's important to understand where you came from and how that's informing what you're doing now. And I feel like you've been drawn to brands that, like, I love the fact that people said that's dumb. I mean, and yet those were the things that were alluring to you. So why did you call them dumb moves? Well, and what was it about those brands, again, Uber, Yeti, AG1, and Success, that were so alluring?
So it's great. It's a great question, and I maybe need to be lying on a couch to answer these. But the the a couple of things I always look for is what's the best product. I am not a good enough marketer to sell bad products. I think you have to be a very talented person to do that. So one thing I always loved was you know Uber had really was such a fascinating product to me. And when I spoke to everyone at Uber, there were so many things they were doing that just hadn't been told, right? And that was part of their problem. They hadn't told the story of how 70% of the deaf community are unemployed, but Uber was the number one employer of deaf people because we created a deaf driving app for drivers and they could earn. Well, that's incredibly powerful story, right? How it's changed the movement of cities, how it's given people the power to earn. All this stuff hadn't been told. So we knew that the product was a game changer, but there was so much to uncover. Yeti too really created an industry, of incredible products that just needed to scale their storytelling a little, right? But it was such a industry leader, and AG1 too, tackling this crazy health industry, this snake oil industry, and just not compromising with the product they make and put together. As a marketer, that's very interesting to me. So I have a phenomenal product, but probably a little bit under leveraged in storytelling. How do I make my life as easy as possible? That's a good start, right? But also, you also have to appreciate a challenge. So for me, Uber, when I was a great story about Uber, they actually called very early and said, look, would you come? We don't really have marketing. Would you come help us out? And I said, no. I said, look, I'm very happy to RJ, call me back in like a year. And every year they called and I really appreciated that. So I finally said, look, here's one of the world's great brands that doesn't have a brand. Couldn't tell you what an Uber ad was at the time or any advertising, but I knew the product was addicted. So that to me was
Well,
a great
by the way, the
challenge,
product is actually not a physical thing that somebody would hold in
right?
their I mean,
Right.
it's a physical car, but that's not
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
anyway, it's
It was
fascinating.
I mean, it was really the physical digital coming together, which I think is is the magic. But you got to look for that tension and challenge, right? So great product, but there's tension there. There's a challenge there. And when my very pregnant wife and I drove across the country to San Fran, Uber fell apart, right? Delete Uber occurred. The Travis stuff was happening, all this stuff. And we thought, geez, do we do a U-turn back to RGA or do we keep going? And I'm glad we kept going because the challenge breeds creativity, right? Chaos breeds creativity. And if things were great at Uber, I don't think I would have been able to have done half the stuff I ended up doing. It was the tension and chaos where they kind of allowed you to go, well, look, we give it to him, see what happens, right? And that was, fruitful because we were able to really turn things around. Same at Yeti, one of the great brands, very popular in Texas and Florida, wanted to scale, didn't quite believe they could, and they absolutely could. They're a phenomenal brand and scaled beautifully. It was just really giving it the encouragement and scale to go tell that story to grand. So always looking for a little bit of that tension as something you could lean onto. I always say, like, what's the God, I think like the CMO of Nike or the CMO of Apple would be the worst job in the world. I could only stuff that up, they're so talented, so great. But give me a good challenge and a good product, and I think we'll do something interesting.
You run towards the fire, you run towards the twister. You wanna get
I think there's more fun to be had.
Well, but let's talk about this again with your creative background now. We talk about this magic concept. It is very interesting because I feel like creativity in the traditional sense is sort of under attack these days. I can't not ask you about, and I want to get to AG1 in a minute specifically, but I can't not ask the AI question for you. And I mean, talk about there's something broken with agencies. I mean, look, you can, if we wanted to, we could spend time talking about, 2008 financial crash and the rise of procurement, and suddenly, like, there have been some different shifts that have taken place. Obviously, some have been technological, some have been financial, etc. Uh, but a lot of that creativity has been sort of like, it's at a premium. It's not as readily available in the magic piece. But how do you, especially as a foundationally a true creative mind, think about how creativity is being redefined now? How marketers, in particular CMOs, what are the best practices for bringing creativity back in a way that might not look like what it was 10, 12, 20 years ago, but it can still rekindle the magic around the brand?
What a, as a weighted question. Let me start with, I think, y- creativity and how that's, look, I hope people keep saying or pushing towards no creativity for brands, because I think what it means is the ones who have it are just going to dominate, right? And I am in full support of that, because all it'll do is say, see, look at that, you know? And I actually look back to '08. It was a big turning point at RGA, because all of a sudden there were clients who were willing to spend into the recession and try things. And they came to RGA because they were like, I don't want to spend on TV. That seems expensive, but I'll see what happens here. Right. And that's where I think we actually did the most interesting work, right? Creativity led a lot of brands out of this, this dull. And so that's the hill I die on. Creativity will lead brands to the right place. And listen, it's funny, because I don't think CMOs are trained in creativity, right? Or how to pick good work. I think there's a lot of smart marketers out there, but what's hard about creativity is a lot of it's taste, and gut, and there's no MBA for that, right? My MBA in that was 10 years getting grinded as a junior copywriter at an ad agency in Australia, and then sitting around great creatives as you grow to kind of work out what's good. And I think, again, what was great about Uber, YETI, AG1, they were like, look, I think if we could do good, tasteful work, I think that's half the problem, right? And I think for,
Credit the other leaders. You credit the CEO, the boards, whatever, whoever else is in the company with seeing creativity for the value that it brings.
yeah, so like if I think about YETI, right, a tremendous leader there, Matt Righteous, um, very smart guy, not a guy you would think, oh, that's a real creative leader, right? Um, But what he always understood was the value of this product is a brand, right? The minute you become a commodity, the minute people go, is this cup, should I buy this cup or this cup? It's over, right? It's got to be, oh, is it a Yeti or isn't it? Right? And that is brand and the creativity that encapsulates, right? It says something about who you are if you come to a picnic or a tailgate and you don't pull out a Yeti, or you do pull out a Yeti. It says something about you, and that's where you want a brand, right? That's where you want things. And he understood that. And so I think, without putting words in his mouth, which I'd never do, is he understood that, right? And understood the power of brand. It was the same with Uber. Geez, we're in such a hole. We're not going to performance market our way out of this, right? We have to rebuild a brand. It was a brand that wasn't really built on great foundations, so we had to do that. AG1 too. If I look at AG1, a D2C darling, right? Phenomenal business. And did super interesting things early on, are now at a stage, and they were so smart to get ahead of this, where they're like, look, we're at a point now where the business is so, maturing so well. We need to think about our brand long term, right? And that's the exciting part. So it really is about those leaders who can get ahead of it, not get stuck in the day to day. Hey, what was the number today? Did we hit our number today? I say we're building this brand for 200 years, not the next two. And you have to make decisions based on that. Find people who get that, right? And work for them. The other thing I'd say is, to any marketers out there, young marketers, be picky with who you work with. It's like it's like when you're with a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you think, I'll change him. I'll be the one that can change him. No, you won't. No, they have to go through something themselves to work out that they need to change themselves. It's the same, I think, with CEOs and brands. You can't turn up to a brand that doesn't want to do it and tell them no, here's how you're going to do it. That's a very hard thing. There has to be something there to play with. So anyway, long story. Back to AI and things, there's always been tools for creativity. Always, whether it's Photoshop, you know, a digital film, which I remember when I was a kid in young production days, and they were like, "This is the death of advertising." You shot that ad not on film, you're going to advertising jail. There'll always be tools for creativity. It's, do you have the taste to use them well? The do know is the consumer loves a great idea. They understand good insight. They understand good emotion. How you deliver that is up to you with whatever tool is available. But if you don't deliver that, it doesn't matter, right? I think Coke got a lot of heat for that AI ad. It didn't bother me. It was AI. It bothered me. The idea kind of sucked. That's what bothered me. If I saw a great ad that was AI, I'd be like, great, awesome, power to you. Yeah, it's the fact people are just, the idea is AI, and that's the problem,
Yeah.
right? That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Such a good call out. Okay,
Yeah.
so AG1, let's now talk about this company that you're at. You've been there now for how long?
8 months,
Uh,
7 months, maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
August
It'll-
24?
yeah. Say that again.
August? Was it last August that you
Or yeah, later September 24.
September?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yeah.
So, where is that company in its journey? Obviously, you said, yes, it was a GTC darling. And as you talked about previously, you liked to go into places that you frankly had some play at, right? Where you could kind of take it from point A to B or B to C. Wh where was AG1 when you joined? Where is it now in its journey? What's your aspiration for the brand and business?
Yeah, great question. So a couple of things. I actually saw a lot of YETI in AG1, right? When I joined YETI, we were about 500-600 million a year. The category leader created a category, if you like, had an enormous loyal fan base. I see the same with AG1, right? It's a $600 million, all subscription, one channel, really loyal fan base, created the category, and is the premium player. So I really like that challenge.
And by the way, I should say on that point real quick, community brands that have community around them seem to be also things that you have gravitated to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole other podcast. I think that building through community is the greatest way to build a brand and build brand loyalty. It takes time. Again, you need those leaders that support you in that endeavor, but you can't fool your community, right? And if you invest in them and you're for them, everyone else will follow you and come to you. And in fact, if you're very focused on them and don't care about anyone else, it makes them want you more. And so I could go on for days on that, but you're absolutely very astute. I build through community and then tell story about that community, and that goes and gets you a larger audience, as a strategy. So look, AG1, the other thing about AG1 was it's a snake oil industry, right? There are so many players out there that just are cheating, and don't put themselves through the rigor we do. And I like that, right? I like that for us to hold firm. And we've got so much to talk about. The other thing was, I think health in this country is a real, at an inflection point. It is very expensive to get sick in this country. I grew up in a country where a lot of that was covered for you. Health in this country is a real problem. And personally, I really wanted to be attached to something that I could help improve. And AG1, it just helps you start your day to get a little bit of a hold back on your health every day. And I think that's a super important message. The other thing, back to the business. So 600 million, one channel, subscription, one product. It's just been AG1 forever. So what happens if we start, doing more with that? And, we've just opened up Amazon. We're about to go into some brick and mortar. We are, looking at a raft of things. Today we just launched a new formula. There's a lot of space to play with such a trusted brand. So lots of exciting opportunities again to do everything, all the, I think, little nest building nuggets I've taken from past experiences to kind of use all that on offer, whether that's you know, scale mode, story mode, brand foundation mode, creativity. All these things are now at play at AG1. You know, getting to build the in-house team. All those things are in play and super exciting to me. And you know, it is a phenomenal product, and it will be one of the next great brands of the world because it delivers on its promise. And when you get a brand that does that, you're in a good spot.
And it goes back to your original point, like, you've gravitated to brands that had actually good very good products at the core, so
And great leaders, great leaders. So, you know, Dara at CEO, still there. What a leader. You know, he's kind of the CEO of Silicon Valley, I think, at the moment. You know, Matt at YETI has been at YETI 10 years, right? And Kat Cole at AG1, I mean, what a legend. I mean, people ask, why did you end up at AG1? I was very lucky to have a good resume and a few good options on the table. But you spend 10 minutes with Kat Cole and you're going, you know, because she is, you know, just so supportive in what we try and do, understands the mission and wants you to live it, and is just, what do you need? My calls with Kat are, what do you need? How can I help? You know, when you hear that from your CEO, you're in a good spot.
I have to ask Paulie because, you know, adjacent to your product, you know, it's GLP-1 mania now, right? And we're, you know, focused on weight loss products, nutrients, supplements. So, and we don't have enough time now to go deep on that, but like that to me is an example of something that's rising up in culture or rising up specifically in the healthcare world so that there's so much attention being paid to that. How as a brand do you think about I should adjust my messaging against the backdrop of that? Or do I hold the line and just keep marching forward, you know, not paying any mind to that? Or is it somewhere in between? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in between. I think the AG1 folks, you know, our research people who are the best, have always understood that the gut is the second brain, right? And you got to look after your gut health to have a healthy brain and healthy body. And so the fact that GLP-1s have come along and the AG1 is a core benefit to take if you're on these things is good. But here's what I'd say, you know, it's foundational nutrition. You should be taking it anyway, whatever you're on. And the other part of that, I would say, and it's really the thing we're focused on, is clinical studies. Look, is the product you're taking clinically studied? Have you done the research? It's very expensive. It takes an enormous amount of time. We've really doubled down on that. So the thing that I think worries me the most about the GLP-1s and stuff isn't the GLP-1s themselves. It's the supplement community doing what you just said, which is jumping on saying we're the solution. And they have no idea if they're the solution or not. The supplement community isn't regulated. It's not regulated by the FDA. So they don't have to test themselves. They can just make claims. And a lot of them are small, so they can make outlandish claims, right? So that's what worries me. Listen, if you're a supplement brand out there that wants to do the right thing and educate people, how do I support you? Right? We want that in our industry. The problem is there aren't many of those out there, and so we have to hold that torch. So there will always be something that comes up, whether it's GLPs, whether it's you know, digestive issues, all this stuff. They're not fads per se, but they always come. They come, they go, they pop back up. They're in vogue. They're not. You have to be above all of that all the time to be fad resistant, right? And that's why your messaging is incredibly important. If you bounce around and, hey, I'm for this. No, just kidding. I'm for this. Oh, I'm also for this. The consumer's like, I'm lost. And you don't seem very into this, actually, you know? So that's the point. Who are you? Understand who you are. Stay true to that and stay true to your community. The rest will take care of itself. GLP-1s might come along. There might be a new thing tomorrow. as long as people know who you are and what you're about, you will be ready for all of those. The best example, I think, Stanley and YETI, right? Stanley was on an incredible hot streak with this youth thing, but they kind of really stepped away from what Stanley was, which was this 100-year-old camping brand. And we probably could have done the same thing. Like, geez, should we go for this young 16-year-old hot market? The look what's happened now, right? Uh, Things come and go. If you stay true to who you are and what you are and believe in it, and your community believes in you, you're still standing. And that's a very long-winded answer.
Very, very great advice and such great insight for any other marketers listening. Um, we're kind of at time, but I have two last quick questions. What's on the horizon? What should we collectively be paying attention to coming from AG1? Any news you want to share? Anything you want to tease as we move into the second part of this year?
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff. Firstly, I think pulled together an amazing group of humans, which is awesome at AG1. And really the goal is to, what I would call, kind of relaunch the brand, not a rebrand, but I think in a world of influencers and all these media techniques, I think it's like, who are we? Who are we for? And really resetting that back to our core customer is fantastic, I think. And then reintroducing ourselves to the consumer, right? We believe in owning the mornings, and I'm excited to start doing that and launch that as a brand platform. The other thing I would say is great ideas. Listen, if you can be mediocre and you have a ton of media dollars, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You can do this. If you don't have all those media dollars, then you better have some bloody good ideas up your sleeve. And that's what I always push my team. Hey, the better the idea, the less I have to spend, actually, guys. So let's do great work that cuts through. So I think a couple of things. Reset the brand and reset our position as the leader in the category, right? We've just come out with all these new clinical studies. We've put millions of dollars in. We've committed $20 million in research to the next 3 years. No one else is doing that in our category. That's what industry leaders do. And that's part of our focus for the near term. And then, if we roll out some new products and new things, be ready for some great ideas to help us launch all that. So that's what I'm super excited about.
Let us know at Adweek because we'd love
No,
to
you
be able to
be,
share that news.
be my
Uh,
first call.
Who's next? So my last quick question. Who is somebody who you admire from afar or a close peer, somebody who holds the CMO title or equivalent title at any other brand that you think is doing some extraordinary things that I should have on the podcast?
Oh, what a great question. People I admire, I don't know very well, but Tariq, I think, the time he had at McDonald's, you have to do a case study on, right? I think of just, again, I just give such credit to big, not that McDonald's is an ugly brand, but a big organization, big global brand to do great work in that environment. What a skill, right? And the grimace work, incredible, Cactus Jack, all that stuff. Imagine trying to sell that through, just phenomenal. There's two ways you can sell that work. You either con people and don't show them, or you bring them along and they get excited. I bet you he did the latter. Um, yeah, yeah. And then, just people I like to talk to. Musa, I think, there are so much smarter people than me out there. The more I could talk to them and just sap off them, the better. If I had 1 hour left in my life, I'd probably give Nick Law a call and just say what's up and hear what he had to say, because he's always got some new angle on the industry. And I'd put Shingy in the same boat. Dave. The thing I love about Shingy is I think people have a real perception of who that is. The first 30 seconds you talk to this guy, you go, this is like one of the greatest guys I've ever met. And he's just thinking on another level. And so I love that with him. I love all the stuff that comes with him, because much like a great brand, he is who he is, and you love that, and he's never changing, and he is as advertised, and it's kind of what I want a brand to be as well.
Awesome, awesome
Yeah,
suggestions, all of
yeah,
them, for all the reasons you articulated, and so, that what a killer panel that would be, right? So we need to bring you all
uh,
together for that, so
yeah. Maybe too many Australians on that panel. We'd have to,
all good.
yeah, bad things. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Great things.
yeah.
Paulie, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, and,
Yeah.
I look forward to continuing the conversation again sometime, hopefully in person, and
Yeah.
until
Loved it, Jenny.
good
Thank
luck.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Marketing Vanguard, part of the Adweek Podcast Network and Acast Creator Network. You can listen and subscribe to all of Adweek's podcasts by visiting adweek.com/podcasts. Stay updated on all things Adweek Podcast Network by following us on Twitter at Adweek Podcasts. And if you have a question or suggestion for the show, send us an email at podcast@adweek.com. Thanks for listening.